Welcome everyone, and welcome to the third Business Sustainability Forum, a forum to encourage activities and initiatives that promote sustainable development in Venezuela. It is important for the private sector to work all together to support the necessary actions in order to achieve our Agenda 2030. So no one is left behind. We are Marisabel Pargas and Unai Amenabar. We are very pleased to be joining you in this meeting. Welcome. We would like to welcome everyone very warmly. We're so pleased that you're here with us to the residing coordinator of the UN in Venezuela, Gianluca Rampolla, President of Fede Cámaras, Mr. Carlos Fernandez, Executive President of Banesco, Marco Ortega Vargas, CEOs and representatives of companies, also staff and representatives from funds, agencies, and UN programs in Venezuela, representatives of the public sector, socials, academics, ladies and gentlemen. This third edition is very peculiar. We are for the first time present in the same physical venue, and we also have an online audience, of course. Thank you for your presence also. Greet you very warmly also. You can participate through the chat for this forum. We will be listening to your comments and your feedback for the people following us on YouTube Live. We also have simultaneous interpretation by selecting the channel. We have a technical staff to advise you, to support you through the YouTube channel. So let us begin with this constructive dialogue, the meeting today with a vision for the future, and we'd like to welcome Gianluca Rampolla, the resident coordinator and humanitarian coordination of the United Nations in Venezuela. Mr. Rampolla, welcome. Thank you very much. Well, it's really a pleasure because it's the second meeting in 1 week that we have with the company. So I think this is a sign of the direction that we prioritize as United Nations for this country to encourage change. So I would like to acknowledge and thank Marco Ortega. Thank you for your hospitality, the President of Banesco. I'm always excited to visit new venues, and this Ciudad Banesco is amazing. Just the architecture is a work of art. And I think it's a sign that of what this country is and can be. And my friend Carlos Fernandez, who received me, welcomed me with open arms when I got here 10 years ago, and gave me an idea of the complexities, but also the amazing opportunities ahead of us, ahead of this country. So, thank you for all representatives, company representatives, colleagues from the UN ecosystem, and everyone following us online. Good morning, everyone. It is an honor to be here this morning, opening the third Business Sustainability Forum. It's been 3 years of this very important joint effort between the UN and the Venezuelan private sector, with the purpose of promoting actions that have an impact on improving the lives of people, with a clear guideline to the Millennium Development Goals and related actions. I would like to thank all organizations joining the forum, and I applaud the decision of opening this with the private sector in the framework of the MDGs, that we can have an impact on public policy to find forums or open spaces for policy dialogues to move from confrontation to dynamics of conversation and discussions to achieve a shared vision of the future for Venezuela, together with a renewed effort or new renewed approach for development, is an indispensable condition to overcome the crisis. As we have insisted in many other forums, MDGs can also be a point of consensus for our short, medium, and long-term goals for Venezuela. We have the challenge of accelerating the recovery of the economic crisis and the COVID-19 crisis, which is still having a huge impact on life, and that's why we need humanitarian aid that tackle vital needs while improving the resilience of the communities, institutions, and local service structures. A few days ago, we were talking with you to identify new spaces where the private sector can contribute in alleviating the most urgent needs of Venezuelans. The idea is to work together a response by joining efforts in contributing to the communities that need it most. As we said in the first edition, we cannot go back to the traditional way of doing business. It's not sustainable and does not meet market demands or demands of the people or the environment. Our colleague from PMG was actually making a comment about this. Transformation of the business sector needs to be ambitious to be up to the current challenges, especially in Venezuela. We have to overcome the role or transcend the role of multi-sector alliances so each of us can contribute to improving resilience and create a more sustainable future for all Venezuelans. At the United Nations, we believe that the best way of doing business is to put sustainability at the core of business action, to reduce inequalities, transform actions to reduce impact on the environment, and also transparency and ensure human rights. Therefore, this platform, I want to use this platform to raise a few issues for a common agenda. First is coordination. And this is particularly important if we want to have a real impact on the lives of people, if we want to improve their quality of life. The coordination between private sector companies, between companies and the UN, and companies and the public sector would be a winning formula that would allow us to have shared or added value and multiply the impact. The second issue is the implementation of sustainability initiatives that transcend corporate responsibility between organizations. In the second forum, we moved forward with prioritization exercise. My proposal is to take up the initiatives of the private sector for sustainability and to develop initiatives for ambitious results. And we have a few examples. Companies can contribute to strengthening the education in Venezuela by recovering infrastructure, updating systems, among others. We know that education is a priority for economic viability. They can also promote gender equality by adhering to the principles for women's empowerment. Companies can contribute to prosperity through the diversification of the national productive matrix and the development of better and new industries. They can agree together a common policy for opportunities and first job opportunity for men and women. The private sector can move forward in reducing impact on the environment, promoting circular economy, and by promoting national agenda for climate change. Companies can support progress for public services for the community and can also move forward in implementing the recommendations on human rights for companies. The third has to do with investment. We know the importance of the investment gap for development in the global context, and especially in this global context limits funds related to very particular conditions that are very familiar in Venezuela. A couple of days ago, we were signing a framework agreement with CAF, so I think it's important that as part of the policy dialogues, we can have we can encourage development banks to invest again in Venezuela. Alliance is going to be a key issue. We need to move forward to innovative working schemes through coalitions that can promote transformative initiatives based on our Venezuelan context. This forum will have tools, dynamic tools, for concrete actions and feasible actions to have an impact on the quality of life of people, especially among the most vulnerable groups. It is true that this discussion that we're going to have next week in your assembly, in your general meeting, sustainability is going to be a key issue, not only in the conversations but also in the deliberations. In this third edition, we're going to explore the environment of investment and how to make it sustainable. Also experiences PPPs and also how companies can join sustainability in Venezuela through concrete actions. Lastly, I would like to thank the organizing committee that for the third consecutive year is promoting this important space to co-create together and to bring the contributions of the private sectors for sustainability and a positive future for Venezuela. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Rampolla, for your remarks. Well, right away, we will welcome also President Fede Cámaras, Carlos Fernandez. Welcome, Mr. Fernandez. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, the United Nations, the organizers, for giving us the opportunity again to take part in this forum. We participated also last year. Of course, we are very interested in joining, not only because of a UN mandate regarding our specific MDG, but it's also a mandate of our organization. And our commitment is a very profound commitment with the Sustainable Development Goal, because in the long term we're going to outline the new profile of humanity, and we believe that this limit or these goals are quite a leap towards modernity. If we understand modernity as a development of dignity of the human being, we have seen important progress, not only in the country, but also in humanity in general, regarding the development of these goals. But on the specific goal of equality for all, based on the COVID crisis and global recession and the economic crisis in Venezuela. Despite some timid results in the last few years, we see that there are some issues that we need to tackle. That's why perhaps you have heard spokespersons of the business sector, and that we have set as an important goal, especially last couple of years, the need to achieve or to improve income or remuneration of companies, because decent work, minimum income, and overcoming poverty are issues, are guiding principles that we can tackle, so we can follow this SDG. So, specifically on the objective of overcoming poverty, we need to move forward, not just overcome poverty, but also achieve social inclusion. This social inclusion will come in as much as we can achieve other goals set by the UN and the humanity has assumed. We need to understand that in order to take this leap, the country also needs a different institutional structure. We need a new economic development model that can create incentives so most companies can actually be part of these trends that we can see in other parts of the world that in, is lacking the incentives in Venezuela. So from this bastion, we have gone through many regions of the world because we need to bring this as a new discussion, a new economic model, assuming with responsibility that the income-based or export-based model has caused many problems in past years and is not really aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals. The country needs to give itself a new model with some pillars, which we have in our proposal, and is related to these issues and with understanding the change that in the energy industry and the new ways of organization that are coming up in the world to develop business. But also it needs to understand that the new model or the model, in order for it to be linked with the SDGs, needs to put human at the core as the ultimate goal of economic activity, the driver of economic activity, and I think that's why companies are changing, companies' profile is changing because we are all fully aware that our role, our work, rather than creating wealth, is generating growth for each and every person on the planet. So we hope that this proposal is welcomed and can actually spark a discussion, because when we set as an ultimate goal to achieve modernity imposed by the global trends, nations that are not following these trends are basically going to be lagging behind. So that's why we see that the gap between most developed countries and least developed countries is growing, because we are not achieving this transformation. In the short term, we would like to see a country where education is the vehicle for social mobility and not a vehicle for coming to power, as we have seen in the last few years. To have education, have a vehicle for social betterment, will be the ultimate goal of this model for development. Thank you, organizers. Sadly, I will not be here for all the deliberations, which was my intention, as it was last year. But as some of you may know, we are developing our general shareholders meeting, so of course we have to travel to Mérida to start working on some events. So thank you for your attention. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you, Mr. Fernandez, for your remarks. We will now have the remarks by Marco Ortega Vargas, Executive President of Banesco, and our host, Mr. Ortega. Good morning, everyone. Distinguished Ambassador Gianluca Rampolla, Resident Coordinator of the UN in Venezuela, other representatives of UN funds and agencies, honorable representatives of the Diplomatic Corps, accredited in Venezuela, Carlos Fernandez, President of Fedecámaras, representatives of the national government, representatives of social development organization, of business associations in Venezuela, and companies organizers of the third Business Sustainability Forum, audience online and inside. We are very honored for your presence in Ciudad Banesco today to hold this third Business Sustainability Forum in Venezuela, organized by the United Nations. We have had the privilege of participating as part of the organizing committee since the first forum in July 2020. From that moment, we have been working together to hold this yearly event. A leader of our times is responsible as a human being of having a firm position in the face of sustainability, not only as part of its business, but also along the entire value chain and other members of society. Based on a least complex notion, we have to ensure that we will cover the needs of the present without compromising the resources of the future, or the principles assumed by governments of the country towards the new Millennium Goals in the year 2000 to overcome poverty in different expressions. But these goals have been reviewed based on current environmental, economic, and social conditions. And based on that reflection, which took place in 2015, we determined that as part of the 17 Millennium Development Goals, we have the main global challenges. And they are summarized in something that we all can agree on: overcoming poverty, protecting the planet, and to ensure that all people can enjoy peace and prosperity by 2030. The limits of sustainability rely on us working together for well-being, social development, and economic development, and for us to deliver smart solutions to preserve the environment, which has been hit hard by climate change. In seeking this balance, we can find the secrets of the rational use of resources, of the actions that can contribute to growth and responsibility in improving quality of life. But also, we need to take into account that the needs of the world population are infinite, unlike natural resources. Today, the smartest businesses are investing part of the profits in projects that can benefit the communities in their closer surroundings. Actions that contribute to human rights, education, health, security, governance, transparency, the ability to create quality jobs, the use of technology for environment, and the use of natural resources are just some of the areas of actions where we can be useful as individuals and as businesses. We understand sustainability as a notion that can enlighten the emphasis that we need to have on responsibility, and responsibility guide us towards actions for social development, for economic growth of our associates, and to have no impact on, or no major impact on the environment. If our activities consider the environment, then we're talking about a sustainable process. And based on these considerations, we have some questions, some practical issues. What can we do? Those of us who are not really in charge of transforming raw materials and we are working on providing services. How can we have our businesses and our processes be sustainable? How can we stop environmental degradation in our population? How can we create working environments with equality, with no discrimination? How can we ensure human rights in our closer surroundings? How can we counterpart in designing public policies? In sum, how can we be better? None of us has the exact answer. As a result of meetings like this, with a vision provided by the UN in 2015, and with the certainty that as private sector we can make a major contribution, we have been able to sit down and debate and listen to the third sector, to exchange successful experiences, to understand others, and to walk on this difficult path, we the challenges that we all share today, so no one is left behind. Each sector needs to analyze the options and their capacities to include sustainability indicators in every business process. In the finance sectors, there are very specific challenges, and it needs to develop processes that ensure the presence of the notion of sustainability in all its actions. We should be, or should we dream about a model based on sustainability? This would require novel strategies. And it's not a secret that we live in a very fragile surrounding, so we are clear that the environmental variables, or key variables, are really out of our reach regarding public policy, and that the administration and management of public services are far from our scope of action. However, as soon as possible, we need to analyze our capacities in face of environmental challenges which we have identified. The Agenda 2030 gives us a framework that we need to consider. The Venezuelan private sector knows the 17 actions of, or does the private sector knows the SDGs for 2030? Are we tackling all these issues? This is part of the work that lies ahead of us, in which we take action every day, and the Venezuelan private sector has been a major stakeholder in expressing the responsibility to the concept of sustainability in multiple ways. The answer is yes. We at Banesco, we have a 30-plus year experience with social development in health and education, and permanent action in favor of training young people in different stages of their life. We believe these institutions are social partners and allies. We establish mutual trust relationships. They are our partners in social investments, and as such, they will be strengthened over time. We believe that individual actions do not build long-lasting relationships, so this forum is a step forward in building or raising the necessary awareness for sustainability of the last 20 years. This yearly meeting is responsible for working on the roadmap provided by the United Nations, so private sectors can be aligned in a high-quality response to global challenges. As a coincidence, the chairperson of our board of directors, Juan Carlos Escotet, participating in the third Sustainable Finance Forum in Galicia a couple of weeks ago. In his remarks, he reflected on something. He said, we always must ask ourselves, what else can we do? We should not accept that that Earth is doomed. The problem is not irreversible, and the last word hasn't been said. So his reference to climate change was the core issue, the core part of the reflection. And we agree. We have the responsibility as Venezuelans, as leaders, and as human beings, to have a very firm position regarding sustainability. That's why we're here to have this third forum. The post-pandemic period confirms that we are fulfilling our role at every opportunity. This place was built to exchange ideas, to listen to different opinions, That's why we are pleased to have you here. Thank you very much for listening to me and welcome. You feel yourself at home. We would like to stress these inspiring words and that we are building the road ahead, the road of sustainability in Venezuela. Let us begin to the forum with a specific panel. And we would like to stress some issues that will allow us to move forward this day. Only through collective actions, society can rebuild itself and improve after the pandemic and become more resilient in the road to achieve the SDGs. In accordance with the UN Global Pact, also the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said that this is the time to improve the contribution of the private sector to the Agenda 2030 and the implementation of the Paris Agreement on climate change. Different stakeholders of the where different stakeholders of the private sector can make contributions toward sustainable growth, to create jobs with an approach based on rights and contribute to gender equality through its corporate practices. And to achieve those transformations will require sustainable investment. Right now, we will explore with our distinguished panel of experts how can we promote and ensure that investments are sustainable. That's why we would like to invite Ramon Ostos, partner director of KPMG Venezuela. And also like to remind all the people following on the YouTube channel some of the hashtags so you can mention this event FSE, VZLA, and hashtag ODS. Thank you, Mariana. Thank you, Unai. Thank you, organizers, the United Nations, Gianluca Rampola, Mark Ortega. Thank you for hosting this event once again. It's an honor to be here in this venue and to promote between public sector, UN agencies, and international corporations and the private sector venues such as this or forums such as this so we can work together or move from theory to practice. So I'm going to invite for this part of the forum Mr. Alberto Volmer, President or Chairman of the Board of the National Council for Promotion of Investment and President of Ron Santa Teresa. Pleasure to have you here. I'm Mauricio Vizcaíno, Chargé d'Affaires of the Mexican Embassy in Venezuela. Thank you, Mauricio. It's an honor to share with you also. I don't know, Alejandro, if we're gonna play the video first, or sure we just start the panel right away. Do you have the video? Yeah, that's okay. We have a video by Cali Siderias. She represents the Economic and Social Affairs Department of the United Nations. So let's play the video by Cali Sideria.
Good morning. Thank you to the organizers of the Sustainability Business Forum Venezuela for the opportunity to speak to you today. I represent DESA, the Department of Economic and Social Affairs at the UN. My role is in assisting low and medium income countries to fund their SDG strategies through private investment. During this presentation, I will touch upon my work at DESA as well as my previous experience as a sovereign credit analyst. May I add a little bit about myself? I spent 30 years in the sovereign risk space. I started my career as a sovereign analyst at the Bank of New York, and then I went to Moody's. I was the head of relationship management for sovereigns and supranational, and as well as the coordinator for the first green bond assessment in the market. I briefly worked on Venezuela in the late 1990s and early 2000s. Over time, I have witnessed countries that invested and supported the SDGs are better positioned, have a robust economy, and improved credit scores, which lowers the cost of capital and in turn improves the lives of its citizens. The urgent need to scale up finance and investments for the implementation of the 2030 Agenda was identified and prioritized in 2018. The UN under DESA organized an SDG investment fair, a platform for low and medium income countries to showcase their SDG strategy and present SDG aligned, bankable, revenue generating investment projects to a group of qualified investors. Countries that presented at the fair signaled to investors that they're committed for serious development. They recognize the benefits that will come from these global investors. Over 15 countries have presented year to date, and the fair evolved from an annual event to 3 times a year. Several countries returned to the fair and provided a follow-up on their progress. We recently introduced an investment promotion side event to match investors to country projects. The mission of Namibia co-hosted the first event with DESA, and Namibia highlighted their green hydrogen project to a group of investors. What's interesting about this project is that it totaled $9.4 billion, over 100% of Namibia's GDP, and it includes auxiliary projects such as a new port and road. So it's a really holistic project. When the South Corridor project is completed, that is what it's called, Namibia's economy will double in size. The effects will be felt in all over South Africa as well as Europe. This is a large project. However, most of the projects that are being presented by the 15 countries were over 50 million and above. Over time, we at DESA expect to create a program of capacity building workshops, information sessions, and other activities to help countries build a bankable SDG investment pipeline. Projects presented at previous fairs target financial, manufacturing, agribusiness, and project finance investors. The purpose is to gain awareness and highlight both large and small aligned projects. The UNDP envisions that by 2030, the SDGs will provide standard guidance framework for businesses, investors, and governments, and in turn will unlock $1 trillion in private capital. The aim is to create a policy environment that will be supported, that reduces risk and fosters an inclusive and green economy, leading to the eradication of poverty. The UN has an ecosystem to support countries interested in pursuing their SDG strategy. The SDG investment platform, created by the UNDP and supported by the GISD. GISD is the Global Investors for Sustainable Development Alliance, a group of 30 CEOs that includes Bank of America, PIMCO, Citi, amongst others, and it's a one-stop tool for investors and other stakeholders that would like to maximize social, environment, and economic impact. The platform accesses data, tools, insights, provides market-level intelligence as a first step to investment journey. More specifically, the platform provides access to SDG impact standards and impact measurement and management resources, and access to country-level market intelligence, including case study and existing business models with strong potential to contribute to the achievement of the SDGs. I highly recommend that you take a look at the platform, and you'll see that it's quite inclusive and has quite a bit of information for both investors and for policymakers alike. This brings me to my key point. When it comes to SDG policy development, the SDGs tile should not be viewed on an individual basis, but as a mosaic or a puzzle. You can't focus on one piece of the puzzle without affecting the other. When creating policy, government officials should have all the goals work in concert. There is not a one-size-fits-all strategy. What can work, for example, in Costa Rica will not work in Rwanda. Governments need to engage the private sector, and corporates can engage their employees through corporate social responsibility initiatives. Poverty, hunger, and health at the heart of the agenda, with industry and economic and environmental issues completing the circle. A strong and tight SDG strategy should be created, and projects are created subsequently. Early government issuers and green bonds used the green bonds to set the stage for climate strategy that was communicated both international and more importantly, domestically. For example, Nigeria, one of the first green bond issuing countries and an oil export country, issued two relatively small local currency green bonds, but the impact was quite large. Local investors were educated through a series of presentations at the Nigeria Stock Exchange, and the domestic market was made aware of the importance of investing in ESG. Good public governance is essential to achieving overall and individual goals. Strong institutions are drivers to SDG investments. Investments in social have been proven to help keep governments' fiscal accounts in check. Investors are asking tougher questions related to ESG, and they demand consistent reporting. Investments in green, social, sustainable bonds have proven to improve the pool of investors and, in some cases, pricing of instruments. We must not forget that private investors have a fiduciary responsibility to their stakeholders. Hence, projects need to be revenue generating and with proper reporting. Also, there's a reputational risk to investing in projects that could potentially be viewed as greenwashing. Again, institutional investors will ask the tough questions. It's part of their fiduciary responsibility. Credit rating agencies are incorporating ESG factors in their credit analysis. A strong SDG strategy will encourage positive scores in E, S, and G. A good credit score and positive outlook helps encourage investment, as all these firms have country credit exposure limits that could be increased with improved creditworthiness. Government debt servicing costs can decrease, leading to more investments in the country. ESG rating or assessments, these are not credit ratings, which look at the willingness. So credit ratings look at the willingness and ability to repay the debts over time. ESG ratings or assessments are used by investors, asset managers, financial institutions, and other stakeholders. They expect active and responsible ESG approach from the investors and are more interested in financing the ones demonstrating good ESG performance. This type of rating or assessment looks at the use of proceeds in bond analysis and in other financial instruments or with projects to make sure that the impact reporting is really up to date. What I'd like to conclude is with three thoughts. The first, SDG strategy should be comprehensive. The goals of the tiles must be viewed as a mosaic. Strategy requires common sense. Will it work? And private sector participation is important. Two, projects presented to the private sector must be bankable, revenue generating with proper reporting. And three, proper SDG policies will yield positive economic growth. I thank you for your time. We look forward to having Venezuela present at the SDG Fair. I welcome any questions during the Q&A. Thank you again. Have a good day.
Thank you very much to Ms. Siderius for this video, and it has three reflections, and we can look these SDGs that we have here as a puzzle that together with our knowledge and operations we can align our strategy in the corporate DNA towards these SDGs. The private capital is very important in this, and what we are looking forward in this forum when we talk about sustainable finances is this. I would like to tell you something. Recently in Venezuela, we had the Working Together report that told us that we have worked really hard towards two objectives: the Zero Hunger SDG and health, and the SDG about health and welfare. and we were thinking how could we help to finance this project? How can we be aligned in order to work jointly? But the truth is that it has been 7 years and 5 months and 23 days and 14 hours to the end of the decade of action. We don't have much time. So, yes, this is the decade of action, but we lost 2 years and a half during the pandemic, and unfortunately, we didn't progress much. So, we must work together in order to achieve these SDGs. And that's what I would like to talk about with Mauricio and Alberto. We we have some questions in order to try to locate in the Venezuelan context how to work in the sustainable investment during this decade, as we said before. And I would like to start with Alberto to listen him and see what he says about CONAPRI. They've been working during years and they haven't stopped. They are promoting private investment and they are trying hard to work in the dialogue and the communication because it's very important. I would like you to tell us how could we promote this sustainable investment and how can we maintain the current and future criteria of sustainability of the ESG agenda. Thank you, Ramon. Good morning, and I'm glad to be here. This story, I have told this story many times. A few years ago, I was praying with my kids at night because in the morning we saw a homeless man under the rain and everyone was quite sad, and we were praying and talking about the how to help this man with clothes and a home. And I explained to my kids how to be more charitable. And my second son, who had 5 years, he asked me, "Okay, how could we help him?" And I was thinking, well, we must prepare clothes and shoes and everything for this man, and we have to take the initiative. So the next day, I was thinking about that during the night, and the next morning when we were going to school, I was thinking, okay, there might be a better answer than taking an initiative, and I told him, Alberto, you know how to do it. You can just find him a job. The social responsibility is to create jobs, because through that you can give education, you can give a lot to people. So for me, by the way, you could choose in the entry, uh, you could choose one of these bracelets. There were 17 because there are 17 SDGs, and when you have so many goals, it's hard to focus in one. And I focused in the first one because among these 17 goals, there are ones that are basics and others that are luxury for me. For me, the most important is the end of poverty, because we're in a country in which we have a lot to do in order to reduce poverty, and that's where I talk about CONAPRI. When I was nominated president of CONAPRI, I had some conditions, and the most important condition was that CONAPRI, as a National Investment Promotion Council, um, we are an agency of investment promotion, because and we're public or private public, but here in Venezuela, because of the because of the country, we became an 100% private agency. And with all the polarization that we had during the two last decades, when I was nominated president, the first thing was to convert CONAPRI in a table of dialogue without microphones, because microphones usually have a different impact of what we're expecting. And we wanted to have a dialogue between public and private sectors in order to create an environment, an attractive environment for investors and for Venezuelans and foreign investments. Of course, we started that, and it we were criticized at first, but we insisted in keeping this dialogue, because through dialogue you can build. So that was our main strategy. And the other thing is, during these two last decades, what have been the outcome? We must recognize what is our outcome. So we had nationalizations, expropriations, rescues and interventions of a very strong state in a private sector that wasn't really strong, and we had a capital flight, and this has affected us a lot. And of course, after that, the sanctions started, and with all these decisions that we made in a country that was autosufficient in a way, we had our domestic product reduced, and I was really afraid. I'm not an economist, but Venezuela's GDP is way less than the Cuban GDP. So we really need a lot of investment, and during the next 10 years, economics say that we need $500 billion for these investments. This is not going to be possible through the public sector only. The private sector must be invested in this. So, in order to make the international and domestic private sector to invest, we have to give them some conditions of opportunities, of that they feel that they have a lot of opportunities in this country. And I think it's very important to attract these investors. Also, we have to think about how to build these laws and these rules between public and private sectors in order to generate these attractive conditions. I'm not going to talk about all the conditions, but basically the conditions about uh, the right of repatriation of capitals. I I'm not gonna say all of them, but there are 9 conditions. Okay, thank you very much, Alberto. Definitely the regulations are going to generate are going to protect the investors and the companies. Okay, so now we're going to talk with Mauricio in order to present the experiences in Mexico. The last week, the Bank of Development, the Inter-American Bank of Investment in Miami, had the Sustainability Week. That was an event that also had place in Spain. And one of the concepts of sustainable finances is related to sustainability. We don't talk only about green bonuses, we talk about bonuses that are related to sustainability. And this is to see how the companies are going to show through reports in which SDGs they are working. How is their strategy towards these indicators, and how do they measure this progress? For example, and when we talk about gender equality, we talk about leadership positions in the companies. How is this gender balance? Because this is very important in the decision taking. We're talking about women's empowerment, about equality in the income, in the revenue. So let's see how this is going evolving through time. And I have a question: is where are we going towards? How are we adapting? And how do we understand what is happening in the world? Because we are in a precise moment in which we start to see the enthusiasm and the will to construct something different. And we have to take advantage of that. So I will ask Mauricio if he can tell us about the sustainable experiences he had, because the Inter-American Bank of Development, one of the most important givers of green bonuses. So tell us about your experience in Mexico about the green bonuses. How to visualize and how to understand this in this context. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Alberto. It's an honor for me to be here. I thank you and I thank the UN for inviting us. There are so many countries that are working in this new tendency. And I will start by saying that the numbers say that the sustainable funds have been working a lot, and they have increased more than a half. So this is very important, and Mexico, as a part of the 20 biggest economies worldwide, and with a strategic position, and with treaties with more than 45 countries, we have an important role in this whole change in the towards the sustainable investment. Obviously, as a developing country with emerging economies, we are observing that the increase of these funds or the creation of these sustainable investments is increasing, especially in emerging economies. So I was reading about the thematic debt, which is a concept uh, very interesting because it is about the displacement debt. So we are fighting for the sustainable investments. We want to have a healthy competence in order uh, to make all the countries be interested in these sustainable investments in order to achieve the 23 agenda and its SDGs. I must say that thanks to this invitation, I read a lot about this subject, and because it was not really the subject I usually work on. That's why I'm so grateful. I am so proud to see that Mexico was the first country to give a green bonus. So since that moment, as we saw in the video, we we realized that so many countries want to follow Mexico's example. There were two bonus, one in 2020 and one in 2021, with in the domestic markets, but also in May of this year, 2 months ago, in the domestic market, the Mexican domestic market, there was a bonus of $1 billion. So we're really looking forward for the domestic and international investment, and this is very attractive because the investors' portfolios that are related to sustainability and ESG factors for us in our country, it is very important to attract these kind of investors. Um, as I said a few days ago, there is still a kind of investment that could have a more planet-friendly projects, and but we're still working towards that. So in Mexico, 78% of the programs of the federation's budget are related to at least one SDG. So of course, all the governments have different entries and different taxes, but they also have essential investments. And what we want in Mexico, and what we have been working on since 2018, is to find the most quantity of sustainable investments. And also these investors, they have so many conditions in order to work together. So what we're doing in Mexico to attract this capital is to have a design that is comprehensive. And the question is, what is the impact? So the UN has a important role in this subject because they tell us how to change the programs, what to do about them, and The other important point is to have a solid structure of governance in order to um, administer better the projects. And also, it's very important to have transparency because we're talking about money and you have to be accountable. So, the public administration must be very transparent because if the country is in debt because of this bonus, it is good and it's beneficial for the country. So Mexico's experience during these 3 years has been to construct the framework for the selection process about where are we going to place this and that's we have a very specific category that must include that must create jobs. We don't care really about the donations of or that you have to use what you produce. No, we are talking about um, I think that in the agricultural sector, for example, it's very important. At least 78% of the budgets are linked to at least one SDG. And then another condition is that they have to have rules and a good governance, and they have to try to eliminate all the negative externalities, which is what is not really eco-friendly, what is not really when there is disparity, gender disparity, and they have to be inclusive with the indigenous communities. So one of the main goals of the actual Mexican government is to make the development through south and south, so north and north, and the whole continent. We're working with Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador, and we're really working on the south states of Mexico, and there are so many indigenous people. So we have to try to work with them, and we have to also understand that we have to respect their traditions and their points of view and how they care about the planet and the ecosystem. So all these things are the referential framework for this investment. And we have achieved, when we talk about the 17 SDGs, in this referential framework, we have achieved 11 of 17: health and welfare, education, and zero hunger. These are our three SDGs that attract the most of the bonus, and I must say, all this issue of bonus in Mexico, um, green, has the standards of the green bonds principles and guidelines. So these are international standards of a really high level. So as I said before, the UN is also helping us with this. We're working together, and I know that there are some countries that don't want to let the UN work with them or criticize them in a constructive way. But we have to open our doors and we have to understand that we are all the United Nations. So we have to work all together. And of course, it's something that has been very beneficial to Mexico. The fact that the UN recognizes this investment framework that's related to the SDGs, and that it is very positive and it might be an example for other economies. So this is a little bit about the situation currently in Mexico. And as I said before, there were two bonds in the domestic market, and the goal is to keep issuing bonds in Colombia, Chile, and Peru. We have a Pacific partnership, and in the and our questions is how can we work as a whole region? For example, Mexico worries about Mexicans, but I also belong to a region that is the whole Latin America, and we have to make a spillover effect in order to reach all the countries. Very good, Mauricio. Thank you. And Mauricio talks about bonds and talks about $3 billion. That's half of our domestic reserve. This is a great opportunity, but for that we must strengthen our capacities. So we talk again about the competitivity, uh, which you have talked about, Alberto, in other forums, and I would like to um, say that the UN SDGs are the words SDGs because we all are implementing these SDGs, but thanks to the UN. So I agree with what you said about how each project is related to at least one SDG, and then it is proved through measurement and transparency and trustful information how they're being aligned to the all the goals of the 2030 agenda. We have to be careful uh, when we are not aligned with a particular goal in which we can might have maybe have like negative consequences. Okay, Alberto. So let's talk about the capacities and competences. We should go from the theory to the practice. And let's say, what are the actions that you see in CONAPRI that we could considerate in order to rescue some competencies and capacities towards this competitivity that is so necessary nowadays in order to uh, work with these big issuers of bonds issuers.
Well, talking about social environment and governance, I'm going to focus on governance because I think that the stage Venezuela is right now, first it has to create jobs, have to attract investment. So I think at CONAPRI, which is a robust corporate governance, everybody talks about this, but in the end, they realize that Venezuelan companies they missing a strong, a sound corporate governance structure. So I think our experience, I think the formula is easy, but implementation is difficult. So I think what we're doing at Santa Teresa has been what is the strategy of the organization, and based on that strategy, how to recruit competencies for corporate governance. What are the competencies for competencies moving forward, and then how to recruit the people. Because you recruit a board of director based on friendship, and instead of going the other way around, instead of looking for competencies first. So recently, President Maduro announced, said that state and company were going to issue about, or we're going to be public. We're going to go about 10 to 15%. We're going to have stocks going public, and that was a taboo in Venezuela. And I think that's positive because it will demand good management, transparency, and speaking about governance, the issue of governance will, I think, is going to have the greatest impact because it's going to enable improvement in management, and also is going to force you to be transparent as an organization. So, and if you go into the stock market, which demands transparency and reporting and external audits and accountability to stakeholders, but especially minority shareholders, this will demand a level of management that has to be better. So going back to the board, because in addition to recruiting based on skills, something that has worked for us is that most of the directors are actually external. I mean, they're not shareholders, they're not provider suppliers, and they're not members of the executive team or relatives if it's a family company. And this, of course, will demand from you a certain behavior, a better behavior. So we have corporate governance and then transparency. And then I think the stock market can be a catalyst in this change that we so urgently need in Venezuela. And public and private companies are represented in the stock market when they have to be accountable to public, but also to the regulators. So I think it's going to be an important catalyst for change regarding corporate governance. And yes, we're talking about good practices, good corporate governance practices, and we're talking about anti-corruption practices, code of ethics that is strongly linked to the strategy of the organization to have external directors or external agents in the board of directors, and also the contribution they can provide to the organization. So I think it's perfect. Now, Mauricio, when we talked about these major challenges experienced by Mexico and the Pacific Alliance, and this major commitment, because you were saying we are sort of competing among countries to attract investment. So, how can you be attractive? So, tell us a little bit in this exercise, what were the main challenges where Mexico had to tackle? What changes needed to be undertaken to become attractive and to move forward in this? Say, for example, yes, I can make a sustainable investment, and I can create this link, these bonds to sustainability and the SDG agenda. First of all, and I think it's a key issue of the agenda of the community of Latin American and Caribbean countries, which is corruption. Corruption is a serious issue here. We've had terrible scandals in the region, and scandals that actually toppled governments, scandals with the private sector, bribes. We don't need to go into details and names or names of companies. We all are familiar with those cases, but there was an urgent need for societies, in the case of Mexico, to be honest and say government and companies are in favor of the people. So the scourge of corruption is what we raise as a flag to tell the world and investors and people looking at Mexico that while we haven't defeated corruption, we are fighting strongly against it with public policy of all kinds. For example, we have surveillance, not only as public companies, but also we can work also in the private sector, and the private sector actually agrees with this, saying we want to collaborate with societies. We're not only going to be creating jobs, we're also going to be paying taxes, and we want these taxes to be used positively. So this is one of the major challenges in Mexico, and to be attractive, going back to what I said before, the having Mexico being part of a global market is it's important to be attractive. We have a free trade agreement, one with Canada and in the U.S., one of the most important agreements of this type in the world. We have a FTA with with the European Union, bilateral agreements with many countries, strategic partnerships with Brazil, Argentina, and others. We are just finalizing FTA with Ecuador. We're working hard on one with South Korea. So this entire framework to facilitate business in Mexico also makes us very attractive, very appealing. So specifically on the issue of SDGs, the investors are seeing that the budget of the Federation is actually focusing on what each of the companies have said as part of the corporate responsibility agenda. One of our companies, for instance, one of our flagship companies in the world, is saying, I'm really concerned about the issue of recycling. Coca-Cola FEMSA, for example. And this is a specific value of a company that also reflects Mexico's values, being a Mexican company. So having this agreement between government and company saying we are moving in the same direction, this is what really makes it attractive. This is a country that is investing. I see the figures here. For example, is $20 billion of the budget for expenditure for 2022 that is being devoted or earmarked for sustainable development. And part of that, only 1.4 is actually green expenditures. So education and health are specifically green expenditures, but actually have an impact on awareness, on environmental education, because it's part of the task, raising awareness on children, for instance. And I think he's saying that all human activity should be focused on protecting the environment. So these are one of the some of the challenges that we've been tackling successfully to position ourselves as an important country for investment. Yes, you say anti-corruption practices, because that will create confidence, and this is an indicator that we need to work on. And you also mentioned on how to link it with climate change and SDG number 12 and 13, action for climate. So I've said it in other forums because what's happening, and we are at a distance, but this is what happened with the Titanic. Down in the boiler room, they were just shoveling coal for the Titanic, just moving forward. But in the rooms, you have people thinking what's going to be my new life like in America, and the first class people enjoying the swimming pool and the Titanic and eating gourmet food and enjoying this trip. But turns out that no one, not even the captain or the staff, saw the iceberg. So I think what's happening with climate change, nobody's really looking at it. We have the alarms going off, we have the alerts right there, we have clear messages of what is happening, and our agendas needs to include practices for responsible consumption, responsible production, and for climate. And of course, we need to look at Ron Santa Teresa. It's a generational family business, and now it's a publicly traded, a very successful. So I would like you to comment on this. How were you able to achieve this stability in the markets, a sustainable investment? Thank you, Ramon. I wasn't expecting this question, but it's been quite a struggle. It's actually strengthening internal processes to become a publicly traded company, to trade in the stock market. And what we were saying about accountability to minority shareholders, because majority is somehow easier to handle, but to be accountable to minority shareholders is quite a challenge. So internationally, of course, the issue of internal alignment is fundamental, and one of the key issues is I remember what we have done to align workers on the floor is the space between the space beneath every bottle. For example, if you go to a bar in Tokyo, you have the bottle and say, well, this space underneath the bottle, that's Venezuelan territory. And they should also value adding value, the value of adding value in each of these bottles. Because if you see in a country where we always base our profits or our income in oil and mining for generations, it's difficult to understand the concept of adding value. So we always talk to the workers. You need to imagine a product. It starts with a seed on the ground, and then you need to wait. You need to harvest. You need to transform it, get the juice out of the sugar cane. One part becomes sugar, one molasses. Then you have to ferment it, distill it. Then you have to age it. And after that, you have to put it in a bottle, a label, etc. Until you take this product, a Venezuelan product, and then you have the titanic labor of put it in the international market with different rules. And an economy based on extraction, it hasn't really learned how to be competitive. For example, producing in Venezuela with a low portion, let's say 30% of installed capacity is being used right now in Venezuela. So this, of course, creates major overheads. So to compete outside is an important challenge. And then we have the challenge not only competing in terms of costs, but also in markets, because you're fighting like in a rugby match, but with the All Blacks. First division, you're competing with hundreds of products and brands with deeper pockets, and to be able to reach those markets and position yourself and to have a message that is relevant for consumers. And then you have investment, long-term investment, because we're in an industry when you need to age. Just to give you an idea, our cash flow cycle is 5 years. You buy the product, you age it. Well, it's years. Imagine you have problems with harvest. You can have problem with the harvest or external conditions. For example, 2003, we have an issue because we were robbed, and right now that's actually part of the history of the brand. So the important is to have those challenges and turning them into opportunities, which in Venezuela I think we're all experts right now in transforming adversities into opportunities. Thank you, Alberto. Well, to sum up, I look at it this way: it's not to miss the train. We should not miss the train. We are in the best possible conditions to start over this process of sustainable transformation with investments that will help us restore our capacity or competitiveness. So I will leave some of these reflections here because our resident coordinator we're speaking about coordination, and coordination will be important, will be the element that will join all of us together in this agenda. Not only the SDG agenda, but also the climate change agenda, which is very important for us. Another issue is collaboration. Because even if we are competitors, we need to work together because we want to build our country. Also, the reality that we are experiencing right now, we need to put our feet on the ground to see where we can go. And also transparency. Transparency is going to be a key issue because this is a problem that we've had in the past. So we need reports that show clearly how we're working, how different organizations are working. Sustainability reports or transparency reports. In fact, right now there are two rules being analyzed, created by the new board of sustainability board. There's a standard one, which is a draft, and standard two, presented by the industries, and the effects it's going to have on the financial statements and their reporting. These are being discussed and until July 29. So they're going to take effect for the second half of the year. So this is happening in the major markets. So we're going to have these demands if we want to compete in international markets. So we need to be on top of this. And second, and this brings opportunities, of course. Alberto? Yeah. I wanted to stress something as final remarks to use these opportunities, this train that we cannot miss. We have PPPs, which we haven't discussed. And in order to return to the economy that we need a $500 billion investment, and this needs to come from public and private parties. So 75% is going to have to come from the private sector, and this means that we need to set the conditions, attractive conditions for global investment. So we need to agree also, public and private parties, to work as a team to recover the economy. Yes, goal 17, working in partnership. So we need to understand that sustainable investment is here to stay, and this is going to be the vision of investors. That's going to be their perspective on their investment, the SDG investment. So, Mauricio, thank you very much for your experience, your remarks, the Mexico experience, and Alberto for being a great promoter at CONAPRI and at Ron Santa Teresa. Thank you for your experience. Thank you, Marco, for hosting the event, and Gianluca for organizing these type of events, which are very important for this public-private partnership and for international cooperation, which is making a huge effort in the humanitarian response to assist in this, or help us going through this difficult situation. Thank you again for allowing me to moderate this forum. Thank you. We're going to be discussing partnerships in the next section. Well, the extraordinary panel for promoting investment, where we see how the private sector can contribute very strongly in creating jobs and accountability. Our hashtags, remember, is FFDVZLA 2022 and hashtag ODS. We're going to invite you all to a short coffee break, and our online audience, we're going to have some initiatives for sustainability. It's about a 15-minute break.
Nuestras elecciones dan forma a nuestro futuro. El futuro de las empresas, las economías, las carreras y nuestro mundo. Los insights nos muestran mejores opciones, permitiéndonos pensar y actuar de manera diferente. En KPMG sabemos que estos insights nos revelan nuevas oportunidades. Con nosotros, usted tiene las personas y las tecnologías necesarias para descubrir estos insights y convertirlos en acción. Para que pueda innovar y transformar. De esta manera, la confianza crecerá y un futuro más sostenible se hará posible. Porque cuando actuamos con esta visión, con las personas adecuadas a nuestro lado, las oportunidades están en todas partes. Llegó la hora de transformar insights en oportunidades.
Our small actions can have big impacts, like a ripple effect. Small-scale fishing and aquaculture can bring food to one family and provides healthy nutrition to millions more. It brings value to all. Small-scale fishers and fish farmers also know what it means to preserve the balance in our ecosystem. But our livelihoods are at risk. Now, more than ever, we need to be resilient, include us in decisions that affect us, and we will adapt and innovate with the changing tide. We may be small in scale, but our way of life will keep on making a difference and spread like ripples in the water.
Vamos hacia una sociedad donde los emprendedores serán el factor decisivo.
En el año 2008 comenzó esta marcha entusiasta de Banesco por capacitar para el emprendimiento a miles de venezolanos con la intención de mejorar sus vidas, las de sus familias y sus comunidades.
Hoy día podemos decir que gracias a Banesco hemos recorrido todo el país llevando un mensaje de progreso, de desarrollo y de inclusión.
Con la idea de procurar la inclusión financiera del mayor número de venezolanos, el programa de formación de microempresarios comenzó a ofrecer herramientas de administración, gerencia y tecnología a quienes tenían una idea de negocio o querían reforzar su capacidad productiva y competitividad en el mercado. Nuestra capacitación encontró tierra fértil en la energía creativa, las capacidades y el talento de miles de venezolanos,
algunos de los cuales podemos tenerlos en peluquerías, en panadería, jóvenes que han desarrollado emprendimientos concretos y que hoy por hoy se transforman en sostén de familia, en sostén de hogar.
Te forman como gerente de tu propio negocio.
La visión que nos orientó en 2008 se mantiene más vigente que nunca. Superamos la meta y hoy somos una gran familia de más de 70,000 microempresarios formados por Banesco. El programa atiende los objetivos de desarrollo sostenible y hacemos nuestra la Agenda 2030. Unidos en la acción para no dejar a nadie atrás. En Banesco construimos sueños contigo.
Ami charano pak subarano suno sipon bari subarano upur penatro orinis bari tasca upur mujeres sufrimos en el parto bari ara orinis abur de mi parte ahora casabar y subar abur pena ya yo tengo 6 muchachos y yo no quiero tener más pena muchachos porque yo tuve problema en el parto. A mí me dio hemorragia. Yo tengo como que prolapso, útero, no sé qué más médico me dijo. Y yo ese día yo me puse a llorar, pensé de mis hijas, mis hijos. Yo quiero ver a mis hijos que sean grandes, quiero ver que mis hijas estén grandes, quiero ver a mis nietos, a mis nietas. Yo prefiero cuidar mi salud, yo todavía quiero vivir. Ya que vino, nos dio una charla, a mí me gustó, yo ese día llevé a mi esposo y yo le dije a él que hasta aquí yo llegué, yo quiero ponerme ese aparato. Ya estoy contenta, ya yo me puse el aparato, voy a ver futuro de mis hijas, muchas gracias.
La preocupación por el bienestar social es un sello que nos ha definido como empresa desde mucho antes de nuestra conformación como empresas PMC. Construyendo Esperanzas es nuestra respuesta a esa unión con fin solidario, apoyando las comunidades cercanas de nuestras operaciones en los aspectos donde consideramos tener mayor posibilidad de marcar una diferencia. Desarrollamos iniciativas que incentivan e impulsan el deseo de superación en nuestras escuelas apadrinadas. Promocionamos los requerimientos nutricionales de la primera comida del día a través de nuestras dos modalidades. Desayunos variados a niños de preescolar con la asesoría de la Fundación Bengoa y Un Vaso por la Vida, bebida nutritiva con la que complementamos la alimentación de niños desde preescolar hasta primer grado, en alianza con el Dividendo Voluntario para la Comunidad. Buscamos brindar conocimientos y oportunidades de crecimiento a los sectores menos favorecidos. Trabajamos conjuntamente con Superatec para promover la actividad económica y el fortalecimiento de la persona desde la capacitación de sus habilidades. Promovemos una forma divertida de reforzar la lectura, la agilidad en matemáticas y la sensibilidad ambiental en escuelas públicas, a través de la herramienta Amblema. Hemos acercado la salud a casi 2.000 personas, organizando jornadas médico-odontológicas en zonas rurales donde carecen de centros asistenciales. En Empresas PMC integramos el compromiso social como parte de nuestros objetivos de negocio. Estamos convencidos de que al ganar nuestras comunidades, ganamos nosotros. Juntos, dispuestos a forjar las bases del futuro de Venezuela.
Piensa en el impacto de una firma. Piensa sobre la magnitud de un movimiento global. Piensa en el poder del cambio transformador de adherir a los principios para el empoderamiento de las mujeres. Un conjunto de 7 principios que promueven la igualdad entre mujeres y hombres en todas las áreas de la gestión empresarial para impulsar el cambio cultural en el lugar de trabajo, el mercado y la comunidad. Presentados por ONU Mujeres y el Pacto Global de las Naciones Unidas desde 2010 y sigue creciendo en el mundo. Los principios abordan 1. El liderazgo corporativo de alto nivel. 2. El trabajo con equidad y sin discriminación. 3. La salud, el bienestar y la seguridad de las empleadas y los empleados. 4. La educación y formación para el avance profesional. 5. Desarrollo empresarial, cadenas de suministro y prácticas de marketing. 6. Las iniciativas comunitarias y de cabildeo. 7. Y la medición e informes. Miles de empresas en todos los sectores se están sumando a este movimiento global para la igualdad de género, aplicando buenas prácticas para atraer talento, aumentar su productividad y mejorar considerablemente el resultado final. porque la igualdad de género es un buen negocio. Al adherir a los webs, las empresas ganan y ganan sus trabajadores y trabajadoras. Además, tienen la oportunidad de impactar positivamente en proveedores, clientes inversionistas y comunidades. Suma a tu organización a las empresas líderes que apuestan por la sostenibilidad, la inclusión, la equidad y el crecimiento. Hoy es el momento de ser agentes de cambio transformadores y generar alianzas concretas. Es hora de comprometerse con un mundo más justo y adherir a los principios para el empoderamiento de las mujeres.
Welcome everyone joining us in the auditorium and those who have connected via YouTube. We have an important participation from this online event that has been set up for this event. Actually, we have more than 200 people watching online. We are very pleased about that. So thank you very much for your participation and your commitment to sustainability. Please remember, if you want to make a comment or question, you can do it through hashtag FSEVZLA 2022. Hashtag FSEVZLA 2022. And we have heard some inspiring remarks from the UN and private sector representatives, but also some exchange of ideas about the importance of sustainable investment. An initiative that we will continue to explore in the next few minutes. And speaking of public-private partnerships, to have an impact on public policy and strengthening or stressing the value of alliances or partnerships. So, and we have invited Luis Vicente Garcia to moderate. He will moderate this next panel. Welcome, Vicente. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Nai, Marisabel. Thank you to see you again. And I'd like to thank UN Venezuela representative coordinator and the entire team that has made this forum possible, because speaking of sustainability should lead us to reflect on several issues or conditions. So we, as a country, to start working on the Agenda 2030 and sustainability issues. So the word sustainability entails set of implications as generations, the current generations and the future generations. But we're talking about the realities that we have, the challenges, the difficulties we have gone through. The pandemic, of course, has left a footprint that will continue for many years. And each sector, public sector, private sector, academia, civil society, we should all come up with ideas how we can support sustainability as a very important issue. As the UN representative Giancarlo was saying, Gianluca was saying, we have to create leaders, sustainability leaders, and we have to work in this regard, and we need to become agents of change in that direction and in that process of growth. And in this panel, which I will moderate, we have four extraordinary persons who will discuss how we can continue to build and improve mm, public-private partnerships at the state level, nationwide, globally or regionally, and in our country, of course. So we will start with a video, which is the vision of CAF. So CAF, as you have said, is the Latin American Development Bank. They work a lot throughout America, or Latin America mostly, to promote development, to promote these issues that are required for sustainable development, and but they should transform society, as Alberto was saying before. We need to advance work in the communities. Carlos was also speaking of education. So these are issues that we need to work on. And as the previous panel was discussing, the multilateral agents need to see Venezuela with a fresh pair of eyes. So we're going to be seeing a video. Juan Carlos Elorza, which is the Technical Analysis and Evaluation Director for the Private Sector at CAF, and then we will move on to the panel. Thank you.
El rol de cada uno de esos sectores dentro del funcionamiento de la sociedad y de la economía. En primer lugar, ¿cuál sería el rol del gobierno de cara al sector productivo, por supuesto? Para concentrarnos específicamente en la relación que hoy nos trae a esta conferencia. Y es básicamente esto, ¿no? El hecho de que el gobierno es el encargado de proveer ciertas condiciones para el funcionamiento del sector privado en la sociedad, ciertas condiciones para el adecuado funcionamiento de las empresas. Por un lado, elementos macroeconómicos como los equilibrios fiscales, equilibrios monetarios, etc. Pero también es el principal proveedor de lo que denominamos los habilitadores de la productividad o el funcionamiento de las empresas. Infraestructura productiva, normas para el funcionamiento del sector privado, como las normas de competencia, las normas de protección de la propiedad intelectual, etc. También regulaciones mucho más específicas, a veces regulaciones sectoriales que tienen que ver con el cuidado de la salud de las personas para que los productos que se producen tengan inocuidad, la condición de inocuidad, regulaciones del tipo también métricas, ¿no? En lo que se llama la metrología, relacionada con estándares de medidas, etc. Entonces el gobierno es como el que de base se preocupa por generar esas condiciones de habilitación. En un modelo esquemático, diríamos que el entorno productivo está o se puede desarrollar, las empresas se pueden desarrollar en un entorno que permita una gestión del gobierno que facilite el acceso a insumos y mercados, por ejemplo, o unas condiciones favorables de competencia, o el apoyo y preparación en el empleo, de protección del empleado, fijación de salarios, establecimiento de impuestos y contribuciones relacionados con ese tema, etc. Pero también, por ejemplo, el funcionamiento del sistema financiero. De esta manera, las instituciones gubernamentales abarcan una relación muy específica relacionada con el sector privado, que no es otra cosa, como les decía, que la habilitación del funcionamiento de esas empresas. En el otro extremo, tenemos cuál es el rol de las empresas de cara a la sociedad y al gobierno. En ese sentido, es básicamente lo que ya todos acá conocemos: generación de empleo e inversión. Son las empresas que generan fundamentalmente los empleos de inversión en la mayoría de las economías. También son los proveedores de bienes y servicios esenciales y no esenciales, hay que decirlo, que mejoran la vida de la población. La generación de ingresos fiscales derivados de su actividad y que cumplen la función de alimentar las actividades de desarrollo de bienes y servicios públicos que el gobierno hace en favor de la sociedad y de las mismas empresas. También estimula el crecimiento de la economía mediante la permanente aplicación de conocimientos, es decir, la permanente acción de innovación que las empresas hacen todos los días alrededor de lo que de lo que
always
producen
be
y de, lo que,
innovating through what they
y en los bienes
produce
que proveen a la sociedad.
and what they
En
give to
algunos casos,
society. In some cases,
también las empresas cumplen con, fundamentalmente con
companies have
la función
the
de proveer divisas
role
mediante la
of
actividad de exportación,
supplying
aunque esto en muchos casos
foreign
también se
currencies.
reparte de la mano
But
del
sometimes
gobierno.
this
Y
is
ahí hay una
also
aclaración,
shared
¿no?
with the
Porque
government.
en algunos países, o en
Because
muchos,
in some countries,
¿qué motiva la alianza?
what
Como habíamos dicho, entonces el Estado
motivates the
necesita a las
partnerships?
empresas,
The state needs
dado que muchos de sus ingresos provienen
the
de la
companies
actividad.
because most
Pero
of
las
their
empresas
income
requieren del Estado
come from
que le
them.
permita desarrollar sus actividades, habilitar su actividad. Para que esta relación sea funcional y
In
estable, se
order
requiere
to make
entonces una
this
convergencia de intereses.
relationship work,
Y es
there
ahí
must be
donde encontramos algunos elementos ya que
an
nos
alignment of their
permiten
interests.
impulsar, promover o promocionar una
They should
colaboración
try
mucho más
to
estrecha entre
promote
gobierno y
a
empresa.
collaboration between
Eh,
government and companies.
Esta convergencia de intereses están siempre en torno al funcionamiento del
This
uno y el otro, ¿no?
goes,
Como la convergencia básica. Pero
this
también hay
alignment
algunos
of
elementos
interests is
que
basic, and there are some
escapan a
elements
ese interés inmediato que tienen los
that go
dos en su
beyond
relación
the immediate interest
bilateral
of
y
each
tienen que ver con, por ejemplo, para las empresas les es
company
útil
or government.
que muchas de las cosas que habilitan su funcionamiento trascienden
Many of
los
the
ciclos
things,
políticos o administrativos en los gobiernos. Entonces, para eso es necesario, y
it's really
muchas veces, perdón, no
necessary.
muchas veces, para los gobiernos también es muy
Sometimes
útil
governments
que
need
las
to
empresas apalanquen ciertos
make the
comportamientos y
companies
ciertas actividades
adapt
que van
some
más allá del ciclo político y
behaviors
administrativo
that go beyond the
de
administrative and
ciertos,
political cycles.
regímenes políticos. Cerrando un poco
And
esta
to
conversación o esta
conclude,
presentación para discusión, les traía a manera de conclusión estos tres
as a
mensajes clave,
conclusion,
¿no?
I have these
Hay que
three messages.
definitivamente eliminar la
We
dicotomía entre el sector
have to
público y el sector
eliminate the
privado.
dichotomy between
Ya
the
en un mundo
public
tan
and the private
complejo, los
sector.
roles del sector
In this
privado
complex
y
world,
los
the
roles
role of the private
del
and the
sector público,
public
si bien
sectors
tienen unos ámbitos
might
bastante definidos,
might
hay un
have
conjunto
different
donde
fields,
pueden encontrar una
but
convergencia y donde se
they
pueden llegar a mezclar incluso
must align their
en roles
interests
compartidos, ¿no?
and they must
Está
share
definitivamente
their
superado el
roles and their
debate que
functions.
planteaba una relación
We
como un
should
juego de
also
suma
go
cero, que
beyond
si
the
lo hacía el
debate
gobierno pasaba tal cosa o si lo hacía el sector privado pasaba
that
tal otra.
says
El concurso de los dos
that
no es una
they
suma
should work
positiva, es una
independently.
multiplicación positiva de efectos dentro de lo que cada uno pueda
If
aportar
they work
dentro de las
together,
empresas y esta
they
visión de
will
cadena de valor.
provide
Es necesario,
positive
fundamental,
outcome
profundizar
to
en
the
la
value
colaboración entre lo
chain.
público y lo privado
And it's
alrededor de
very
la convergencia de
important
intereses. Fíjense,
to
un ejemplo muy
align
reciente
both
es la
sectors.
gran cantidad de casos de éxito que se pueden apreciar en, la
And there are
atención de
so
emergencias
many
como la que
examples
vivimos hace 2 años con el tema del COVID-19, ¿no? Donde las actividades del sector
in
público
which
en
the
muchos
public
casos se pudieron
sector
mejorar y multiplicar
activities
gracias al concurso y
could
la
have been
coordinación
improved
estrecha con empresas del sector privado.
thanks to the
Ambos
private
sectores se
sector.
necesitan, ambos son
Both
funcionales de
sectors
alguna
are
manera el uno
functional
para el otro, pero su
and are
convergencia crea
necessary
sinergias
to
que
each
permiten
other,
un mucho
but they
mejor efecto,
must align
como les decía, en este mundo tan
or be
complejo que
aligned
está lleno
in
de
order
tantos
to
retos para
work
nuestras
together in a
economías, para
better
nuestras
way.
empresas y para nuestros propios gobiernos, ¿no? Entonces, terminaría con esto, dándole las
So
gracias y
I will
bueno, por
finish with
supuesto,
this.
quedo
Thank you
atento
so much.
a sus comentarios y
I
preguntas. Muchas
expect your
gracias.
commentaries and your questions. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to Juan Carlos Arlorza, that beyond the fields that he knows, there is not only the technical part of the private sector, but also the partnerships. And the partnership subject that we've been talking about is about sustainability. We must try to promote these subjects in all the fields that we manage. So thank you very much, Juan Carlos Arlosa from CAF, for sharing these ideas. And I think that he said something very important, that when you generate actions, the outcome is a multiplier effect. The initiatives that we are noting, thanks to the comments that you're sending us through internet, are helping us to take notes, and we're really interested in seeing how we can work together. Um, when we talk about sustainability, we talk about development, and development depends on sustainability. Every country, each country, must be careful and look forward for its people's prosperity, and must try that all actors participate in order to create partnerships, in order to work all together towards these goals. We know that society has been through difficult crises, not only the pandemic, but also the Venezuelan crisis. We've had many upside downs, and we realize that there are so many things that we haven't done yet. The thing is that not everybody sees this as a priority, so we must think, how can we promote the 2030 agenda, and how can we make the key subjects to be taken into account. The growth that we're seeing here in Venezuela might not be the most balanced, but these new partnerships that we can create must be promoted in order to keep this growth. I was also I was saying that all the practices that we can implement, because we must guarantee job creation in order to have a prosperous society. We have to understand that we must transform the necessities in action plans in which we can work all together. In May, we had the World Economic Forum in Switzerland, and the global leaders, NGOs and others met during a week and talked about sustainability the whole week. And I think that this is such an important subject, and we have to promote ideas to achieve this. So we have here a panel that will discuss about the practices that we should implement and the programs that public and private sector should apply in order to achieve this sustainability. I would like to invite Ana Maria Mancera, who is the manager of Movistar, Manuel Avila, who is the research manager of the DANAC Foundation, Yamel Perez, who is the ODS, Chains of Value Inclusive Development Officer, UNDP. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure for me to be here and discuss with you and exchange with the public and with the online public to exchange about these ideas. So we have a few important sectors. We have the telecommunication sector, and we have a company that is working in food programs, and you're going to see some examples. And we have the UNDP that has been working in promoting the 2030 agenda and the change, and how can we achieve all these SDG goals. So my first question for the three of you is, what are your organizations doing and how are they contributing to strengthen the public and private partnerships in the country? So shall we start with you, Ana Maria? Yes, thank you, Luis. So in the name of Telefónica Movistar, good hello everybody, and thank you for inviting us in this third Business Sustainability Forum 2022 to tell you about our experience and to talk about the public and private partnership. Our company has as a mission to make a more human world and to connect people's lives. I would take the words that they said before. They said that the main goal of the SDGs is to improve people's lives. That's why for us, sustainability is a strategic route. It is a transversal route in our whole company. And this route has three principal fields. The first one, society. Number two, environment. And number three, innovation. So, how do we manage this strategic route in these three fields? In society, we use the SDGs as a guide. We try to reduce the digital gap, and we try to get progress through digitalization. In number two, environment, we try to contribute in order to protect the planet and to stop the climate change. And we're trying to work towards a greener world through green digitalization. And concerning innovation, we always think about the future, and we try to be pioneer in the digital world to obtain greater digitalization. You all know that the pandemic showed us that digitalization came to stay here. Digitalization is essential for achieving the sustainability. So what do? We have a plan of responsible business that works with all the company's fields, that tries to promote an inclusive sustainability, and we promote an inclusive connectivity that gets to all the sectors. We also try to build a digital future that is greener in order to protect the planet, and we try to be a role model. So we have a value chain that is responsible in all the fields, that gets to all our stakeholders, clients, employees. We also have acting principles that has an ethical work. We have a responsible use of technologies. We promote responsible use of technologies. In my opinion, engagement with the society is the most important one. Telefónica Movistar wants to reach all the vulnerable spaces and the whole society with our projects. and the diversity of inclusion uh, among our collaborators. So here I talk about the partnerships. In this whole responsible business plan, the PPPs are essential to achieve sustainability. In Telefónica Movistar, we have strategic partnerships with other companies and other governmental or private organizations. We also have partnerships directly with the public sector, and we also have partnerships with the third sector, with NGOs, to which we work with, and all our social projects are executed with partnerships that helps us to develop all the goals that we have in mind. So we work in with a foundation on the SDGs aligned with the ESG, and we see that the foundation of all this are the public-private partnerships. The partnership subject is key in order to understand how we can work hand in hand with all these companies and create strong partnerships. You said something very important: to add value. That's what we do in our value chain in all the fields in which companies work. So I think it is very important to take note of all these keywords. So Manuel, can you tell us how you are promoting this public-private partnership? So first I would like to thank you for the invitation in the UN. Alimentos Polar, through the DANAC Foundation, has been investing in the Venezuelan agriculture for 30 years. I think we can achieve the sustainable development and we can improve all the Venezuelans' quality of life. Since 1986, we have been working in order to strengthen the productive sector through scientific research. We have been doing it through institutional and individual efforts. In all these processes, we have been trying to work on the fields. We have also worked with rice. We have been working on the rice production and other agricultural products. We have been working with Venezuelan agricultures. The experiences and the technologies are working thanks to the public and private partnerships. We really want to improve and to give solutions to the Venezuelan problems. In the NAC, we're indirectly related to other organizations from the public and the private sector in a domestic and international level. We can't do it alone, but with all the help of everybody. So thank you very much. I think the most important sentence was to strengthen the chain. the production chain. So I think that those are also keywords. Excellent. Thank you very much. Yamel, you might have a larger vision and maybe more complex how these partnerships work and how can they make concrete results. Hello, thank you very much. Uh, uh, Hello. So, partnerships are on the heart of the work that we do in order to achieve the SDGs. And UNDP is working on the 2030 agenda. We're working with institutions of the public and the private sectors and civil society organizations. It has been more than a year that we have been implementing programs in order to promote resilience. We also have another program called SDG Chain Value. This is a program that has been established in other countries and looks for partnerships between the civil society organizations and public-private sector in order to develop programs that are looking to strengthen the corporate management in small and medium industries. So we are giving to all the institutions that want to, we are giving them 3 methodologies that have been approved, that have been updated to each country's situation. For example, here in Venezuela, it has been adapted, and these methodologies are 3. One is Program of Development of Suppliers, and it is a methodology designed in order to improve the small and medium industries that are essential in the production chain. The second methodology is digitalization, which is a long-term methodology created in Ecuador, and it helps micro and small businesses to keep working even though there is a pandemic. This was so good and productive that even if now pandemic is almost over, it keeps strengthening the micro and the small businesses. Currently, we're applying it on the country. And the third one is the path to venture, and it has been always updated, and it wants to strengthen the capacity of venturers or to those small businesses that are starting over. So we've been working with companies in order to support in a complex macroeconomical context that gives new opportunities to the small and medium industries. So, for example, we have a program that is in more than 150 companies that have been chosen by some specific criteria. For example, the companies Industrias Elmo, among others. And we have identified 115 companies that are very important. We also identified what are those essential variables that these companies must improve in order to strengthen their commercialization. The results, the outcome shows that this had a positive impact. It is impossible not to be strengthened by these programs. Another kind of cooperation of the UNDP is with the Minister of Industry. We are in a process in which we're strengthening the capacities of the public programs in order to strengthen the capacities and the productivity of small and medium industries and small and medium companies. We are trying to improve these methodologies in order to improve the public policies. In the agricultural sector, a field, and others, we have been working in partnerships. There are also domestic governments like the district capital government or the one of Maracay, BOD Foundation and the UCAP. They are all institutions that have programs in order to improve the capacity of the small and medium industries in the country. We expect that more companies join us in order to improve all this.
Excellent, Yamil. I think part of what you said is that how we can work together with the productive sector in order to have a better space for them. We're talking about value chains or strengthening all these issues. So, talking about SMEs or in MSMEs, our companies are actually small, have been downsized by 70% sometimes. So the size of companies has also been reduced. The size of businesses are also down. So how can you, through your programs or through these partnerships, have you strengthened these SMEs and MSMEs? Because we're talking about small producers in the field, these distributors, something has to teach something at a school. So what are the examples of some programs that you have started? Ana Maria, maybe you have some examples. Yes, at Telefonica, these partnerships are strategic to contribute to the development of the country. And we want to do it by establishing some platforms for action and joining efforts, of course. And we do this through these strategic business partnerships or partnerships with a purpose that we do through the foundations. For example, business strategies or a specific business partnership. We have a partnership with 17 banks to facilitate means of payment to provide services to our customers. That's an example, a company, intercompany partnership where it's a win-win for everybody. And with sustainable purpose partnerships, we have many examples from businesses and with social organizations. For example, we have a partnership with Conatel, which is the regulator for statistics and data services, with Casetel, which is the telecommunications chamber. We have partnerships with the UN to empower women, which is a beautiful program. We have partnerships with academia, for example, the Catholic University, to strengthen their telecommunications engineering school. This is part of a partnership that we have. Also to prevent children harassment and use of technology with FM Center, with the Book Bank, with Union Radio, with social organization like Superatec. We launched campaigns during the pandemic also with UNICEF to prevent COVID. Specifically, a partnership with a purpose that we do through the foundation. We have with Fe y Alegría, with Venezuela Association of Catholic Education. In one of our programs, a digital literacy program, we have a wonderful program with the government of Miranda, which is the purpose is to develop programs for the future for media literacy in the schools in Miranda and other spaces, and also to the Venezuelan Association for Private Education Institutes to develop training of teachers in all areas of the country. We have with the government of Chacao, we have partnerships with Baruta, Sucre, El Hatillo, with different municipalities in Caracas. And there is one important partnership that we signed last year with INSES for vocational training. This is part of a program that we developed at Telefonica, which is called Conecta Empleo. This is a digital training program. This is free of charge, promoted by Telefonica in Spain, Europe, and throughout Latin America. And the purpose is to improve digital skills for young people, training for jobs, or even unemployed persons that want to improve their employability. So this partnership has a common goal, which is develop skills among Venezuelan youth with these courses, the free courses, to improve employability of these young people. As I said, it's a platform, and INSES contributed with this program as part of their offer for our national training program. This program basically seeks to develop technological skills, but there's other type of training in these courses. As part of their goals, they support the project, they monitor the results of the project, and to date we have overall results in Venezuela, 56 courses and more than 7,300 young people enrolled and participating in this training. This is one of the examples of a public-private partnership of which we are very proud. We have been working wonderfully with INSES with this program, and of course we are open to other types of partnerships in this area to train vulnerable groups, either be it children, young people, teachers, in technological skills that are set to improve employability. Excellent, Ana Maria. And this is simple and practical. Implementation need not be very complicated. Movistar, with INSES, with local governments, with programs that promote technology, because we know that the world is moving very fast towards technology. So these are practical examples, not only of something that we're doing or something that we can do through these partnerships. So these are models that we can replicate. So in your case, Manuel, so not really specific about what a company can do, because you are in some areas, very diverse areas. You have been working since 1986, but important is how do you reach the farmers, the distributors, the people working in the field? Because what this 17 SDGs says that even the production system needs to change, because if we're talking about use of energy, we know that there are many difficulties to working in the field, water treatment, for instance. So what have you done through these PPPs to develop these type of programs? Well, UNIDO said that in 2019 there was a deficit in corn production in Venezuela, about 42% deficit. And basically we ended up importing corn. So it's important to focus our efforts on producing and boosting production. We can mention a specific experience with the NAC Foundation and other two institutions, state-owned institutions, with the Hybrid Seed Institute and the Research Institute, which are attached to the Agricultural Ministry and sponsored by FAO. This is a project, or the purpose of the program is to support the rehabilitation of the national corn seed system in Venezuela to achieve food security. And after COVID, this program was coordinated by a scientific research organization attached to the Agricultural Ministry, and this integration allowed something very interesting, which is we managed to incorporate different types of corn from the Corn Upgrading Center in Mexico. The institutions established certain land plots in different areas of Venezuela, so we evaluated these countries to select which were the top quality. So this was a joint effort, then we had a working group to select them. This didn't end here, but thanks to this synergy, and now we are waiting for a second batch to be evaluated by us. It is important to note that thanks to this, with this material, there's something very important, which is to strengthen the genetic improvement material, because important is to preserve the species throughout time. We need genetic diversity, so here we ensure this genetic diversity and the participation of this research institute, so it can contribute to something which is the sustainable intensification of agriculture. That is to boost production, but considering the environment. So our goal is basically threefold for sustainable development. Hunger Zero, which is SDG Action for Climate, and number 17, which is partnership to achieve the SDGs. So I think it's important to see it in practice. We're talking about PPPs. We're talking about company-company partnerships, but they went one step beyond, with a partnership with a public institute from another country, and this has reaped many benefits, or yielded benefits. So, how many people have you been able to benefit through these programs? Well, thank you for that. With Alimentos Polar and FAO, we had revived the corn seed system in Venezuela this year, for instance. And giving continuity, we are improving the genetics of corn. It usually takes about 9 years, and then the certification to produce certified seeds with the Seed Accreditation Institute, CONACET. And we have done this in communities in Carabobo and in Yaracuy. We have been able to rehabilitate risk areas, for example in Yaracuy, with the citrus disease. These communities were at risk, and we were able to activate and rehabilitate these livelihoods through these productive systems. So we also, with this rehabilitation, we have created demand for about 500 hectares for production. We have incorporated new innovations for the classification and protection systems. We also activated related systems for certified seeds and for grains in these productive areas, and we've also activated small companies for seed production, which is a highly specialized task So we have promoted development of 3 small companies, um, creating 60 jobs working in the field, also for selection and production of seeds. Also, transportation of these seeds for the first companies, and we have also activated state-owned and private companies, and for the processing of corn seeds. So this initiative has allowed or has covered 50% of the production capacity of these companies in only 6 months. So we have been able to contribute to reactivate these companies. There are companies in the surroundings that have benefited, for example, during processing. There are companies who have employed about 160 families. These 160 families are now part of the process of manual selection to ensure a high quality seed. And I would like to stress, taking these seeds to this family, we are protecting them in this context of COVID because it keeps them isolated at their home, so it reduces the risk of contagion. And I would also like to stress on the value of women in each of these stages. Many of them are head of households, mothers. It's very important because they are highly skilled to select the seed manual. They are masters at it. So this has allowed, or this has created a new livelihood for these communities. We have activated a series of services, related services. This year, for instance, we have 40,000 sacks of high-quality seeds of corn for about 32,000 hectares. That's going to yield about 128,000 tons for human consumption. So that's basically saying arepas for 3.2 million Venezuelans next year. Well, thank you. You deserve that. Yeah. Sometimes we lose sight of the impact of this small program. I say small in the sense of how it was conceived. Starting from scratch, trying to find the partnerships, and you'll give us examples of this, but this is a huge impact. I can think of a phrase here. So, thinking about sustainability, it also developed skills. So, we need to think how we can work in developing skills of people, women, like you said, or young people. There's so much work to be done in this area that I think a part of what we need to do, and I congratulate the entire team, the organizing committee, because we need to work in developing initiatives that really drives us ahead. So, it's a beautiful impact. These are very positive news, what you're saying, and many of us don't know about them. Of course, you want to work every day, having an impact, but it's beautiful to listen to these stories and that you have this positive impact. In your case, Yamel, some practical examples, or what would you say, what are we doing and where should we go? Well, right now, the UNDP's work is focused at different levels. One of the mandates is an integrating role of promoting dialogue between sectors, between government institutions and members of the productive sector who have an impact on decision making to develop or promote policies for a sustainable productive development model. We also try to have an impact on strengthening policies that can have a macro impact on value chains, for example, to promote or to give technical assistance. And we are focusing right now on technical assistance because if we look at the diagnosis on the main variables to promote productive development, we always find which is building skills. building capacities to improve finances, so marketing or e-marketing, closing the digital divide, taking the environment as a cross-cutting issue, human rights in the entrepreneurial world, initiatives that support the support of large company to SMEs. One of the most valuable comments or feedback that we've got from large and medium-sized companies participating in the program is dialogue. Many companies have said that they never actually sat down to discuss and to listen to micro, small, and medium enterprises and producers associations that provide services to them. So they all stress the importance of dialogue to generate trust and initiatives that can actually have an impact on a better performance, productivity of all economic agents along the value chain. We have seen that. We have seen positive cases, like, for example, the Corpo Agro in Lara, a small producer, or a natural dye producer, for an entire productive chain. They said that he became from someone who was just a producer and now sees himself as an entrepreneur. Some company said that at first it was very difficult to be part of a training program, an intensive 6-month program where there's only knowledge transfer, and this of course requires knowledge and consistency until we see the results. Once they are 1 month in the program and they start to see the change in their indicators, that's when they start to understand that this is the only way to be resilient, only through knowledge, through training, and through articulations. And we are seeing this, and we have testimonials from all sectors, family-owned businesses, for a 5-people business working on designing uniforms or disinfectants, providing packaging or cleaning companies or maintenance, and also companies that transform raw materials. They all have lessons learned. Each company is different, so the value of such programs is that they are building capacities that will meet specific needs of each value chain, specific needs of each SME. And here lies the success of the programs. Stakeholders that are committed, also beneficiaries who are committed, or they know that the way ahead is training and knowledge. And large companies that are also committed to supporting smaller producers, because that would also bring benefit to them, and also to have technical staff from the public or private sectors or academia or civil society organizations with the profile to give technical assistance so we can have this type of results. Well, that's very interesting, and I think we can draw some lessons for the critical aspects of, for example, commitment, building capacities. What would you say are the 3 most critical factors for the success of these alliances and for them to have a positive impact? Well, first we need an adequate selection of beneficiaries, because these are programs that require investment in time, dedication, commitment. So it's very important to ensure a good selection process. Second is to have professionals, technical advisors, certified with UNDP methodology or other methodology, because there are many. So we need a qualified staff that is committed to the project, and stakeholders that are also committed, that promote articulation. Large companies that are committed and they are convinced that building capacities of other stakeholders in their area of influence is a key on public institutions that are convinced that in addition to setting some conditions, for example, financing in Venezuela, it is important also to promote technical assistance policies to bridge the digital divide, that take gender equality as a cross-cutting issue, that protect the environment, that promote sustainable consumption and production, that promote these initiatives based on building capacities and the integration of small and medium enterprises in their area of influence as part of the value chains. I think that would be a comprehensive approach, but I think it is possible. We're seeing in the country sometimes we see discouraging comments, but we are convinced that there is great potential in this country. There's people who are committed. They want to gain knowledge. We need dialogue, and we need to join efforts to provide solutions that are sustainable. One key issue here is sustainability, so that's why we're trying to transfer this to the largest amount of companies possible and to all sectors to ensure that technical assistance programs are replicated throughout the country, because there's an entire community of MSMEs that need the support. Interesting. And you speak of beneficiaries of the training company and multiplying company, but in the end, we are people. We are all people. This multiplying effect is going to be brought by us. So sustainability is also will work with each of us to become better people, better professionals, but focusing on these issues that you just mentioned. So I think it's excellent. So to sum up, this issue of transformation that you discussed, this has created gaps. There's a generational gap and there's a digital divide. So what are you doing based on education or inclusion to try to close that digital divide that we see right now? We at Telefonica Movistar, we are convinced that technology is key for sustainable development and also to close gaps. There's a technological revolution in the world in the last few years. So technology enables, strengthens, favors, and facilitates the achievement of any of these SDGs. For example, to ensure high quality education, we cannot neglect the fact that technological tools are essential to close these gaps. In any company, or company to close divides, we talking specifically about the digital divide. The pandemic, sadly, actually widened these gaps. So we had been working and making progress for many years with different projects, but the pandemic sadly widened them again. And we at Telefonica Movistar, we are doing our best to close these gaps. As I said at the start of the debate, that digitalization is key for sustainability. So digitalization and projects that include technology to close these gaps are also fundamental. So that's what we're doing at Telefonica Movistar and at our foundation, to bring technology to the spaces when there's no technology, to try to close the digital divide. And this is something that we need to work on. So, Yamel, where is Venezuela in this Agenda 2030? Specifically about businesses, because we businesses need to work on this. We have government policies aimed at some of these goals, but from the point of view of civil society, how can we boost these new alliances or partnerships Where is Venezuela in this agenda? I think the country is at a. I think the time is right to take advantage of these new opportunities in a complex scenario. This is a complex scenario because crises yield opportunities and awareness about the importance of working with articulation. These are complex challenges, and the only way to help is with a systemic approach based on articulation, to build synergies, to create knowledge, to articulate efforts, to be able to give joint responses to these challenges. I think Venezuela, I think the time is right for Venezuela to start working, to move forward, to provide visibility to important initiatives in the country which are very encouraging, to give a message that it is possible to advance a development model to make it more inclusive, more effective, so it can have a positive impact on Venezuelan population. Ramon also said during the break, we were talking about this agenda 2030, and he said we haven't realized that there's only 7 years, 6 months and 14 days till 2030. 7 years, 5 months, 14 days and counting, and 12 hours, yes. So we talk about this agenda 2030, and we talk about 17 SDGs that were approved in 2015, but we're halfway there. And what you just said is that the time is right, so we should never forget or neglect Agenda 2030, but also that there's still a lot of work to be done. So Manuel, you spoke of SDG number 2, zero hunger, partnerships, of course. But how are you going to measure the positive results that you need to generate? Right now, we are working on different projects. So if you like to join, basically 3. One of them is to promote the production areas, which is nothing to envy from international. We have production levels to achieve zero hunger. When we have a seed that is tailored to our circumstances to produce more with less and without deteriorating carbon resources. So this way producers will invest less to control plague because it has already been adapted to our environment, and this is a way to ensure sustainability. So one of the projects is basically to promote this national production. Polar and with projects with the foundation, we have been restoring oil palm plantations in Monagas because plantations deteriorate. So we need to rehabilitate them, and right now that's what we're doing. With new seedlings, so we cannot just sit idly by. We already have programs to produce new seeds and to boost production. We have 12 production areas also that require authorization so we can bring into the market. And the major challenge is to boost production with less resources. So that would be my conclusion. Yes, I think this is the way forward. Telefonica Movistar in a partnership with UNICEF. In your case, with FAO, we have representatives from the UN agencies. And I think we, the private sector, need to promote this rapprochement towards you. We need to come closer to the UN ecosystem each working in the specific areas, because I think together we can have a positive impact. So to sum up, it's been wonderful talking to you. What comes next? What's next, and what would be your recommendations? Well, to sum up, at Telefonica Movistar, we are convinced that working in partnership today is essential to achieve effectiveness, efficiency, but also impact, to have an impact. That's why we are convinced of the importance of forging these partnerships, and we're open to these possibilities. And we are sure that in the future they will continue to yield new partnerships, either public or private. Excellent. Thank you, Manuel. Well, at the NAC Foundation, we really appreciate FAO's support. We hope we can continue working together. Let's hope we can make it sustainable. We'll, of course, would like to put our laboratories and researchers at your disposal for training. Part of this project also calls for developing manuals for artisanal seeds with small producers, because we have to expand our scope of action to provide a well-being for all Venezuelans. So our facilities are at your disposal for Venezuelan agriculture. Well, that's just one seed. Let's hope it can grow. And Yamel, what's next? Well, as a final recommendation, I think I would say to recommend the private sector continue strengthening or building capacities to continue achieving the SDGs, to see what's the best way to promote from the private sectors human rights, what's the best way to promote in Venezuela environment and gender issue as a cross-cutting issue, and to strengthen our capacities of economic sector or economic stakeholders or agents along value chains, also for governments to continue working to build their capacities to create institutions that are efficient, consolidated, that implement principles of transparency, accountability, citizen oversight, and that promote articulation, because what we have learned from this complex situation is to tackle these challenges, we need, in order to be effective, we need articulation and inclusion of all sectors to come up with solutions that can have a positive impact on the entire population. Excellent, thank you. Well, I think we have a great deal of articulated ideas to start working, and there are many notions, and I hope that this conversation, which has been very fruitful, with plenty of ideas, let's hope that we can implement them. So thank you, Yamel, Manuel, and Ana Maria, for sharing with us, with people online, these wonderful ideas of what you're doing and what we can do in the future. Thank you all for joining us. So we applaud this collective reflection, these initiatives that we just learned. Very valuable contribution that yield positive benefits and towards the achievement of the SDGs too. We thank this interesting panel. Luis Vicente, we still have some issues to cover. We are working. Venezuela demands actions for a consensus of different stakeholders and also requires robust, lasting partnerships based on the principles of SDGs, and can enable transformation of the future of the people, promote respect and protection of the environment, create spaces for prosperity, and also strengthen social cohesion. And also we'd like to welcome Jorge González Caro, Venezuela representatives of the UNFPA, and Sara Carrillo, representatives of KPMG in Venezuela. We are sure that this conversation will be very useful or great interest for people following us also via YouTube and people here on the site. Let's remind everyone of the hashtag. If you want to make comments through social media, hashtag is FSEVZLA. FSEVZLA. And there's another hashtag, ODS, hashtag ODS.
Okay, so this is almost the end of the forum. I think now we should. What we want to do is to talk about the concepts that we have been talking today. Partnerships has been the most important subject. Sustainability, leadership, and will have been very important concepts that we want to review, and we want to talk about what is next after this forum, right? So they told us that in order to enter this framework, we do a visualization exercise. Visualization is so powerful. I'm gonna tell a small story. Last month, I was in Margarita for a corporative retreat, and someone said, I told to my husband, let's visualize a trip to Margarita, and he said, are you crazy? That's impossible. And at the end, she was at the retreat in Margarita, and she told her husband, do you know why am I here? Because you didn't visualize it. So let's do a visualization exercise. Let's imagine an ideal country, a country that we have been dreaming of, a country that we dream of. What kind of people live in that country? How do they relate? How are social relationships in that country? What is the individual contribution that each one of us can do to that country, can give to that country? This is an exercise that you should do right now. Take a few seconds. So, did you imagine this country? Sarah and I were thinking, if that country had eventually, we had to name this country, what name would you give to the country? Who thought about a specific name? Venezuela. We all agree we were thinking about Venezuela. Of course, we were all thinking about Venezuela, and this is very positive because when people go through a complex situation like the one in here, and they think about an ideal situation and they think about Venezuela, that means that they are optimistic and that they really believe that the country can get out of the complex situation and have a fresh start. So, as I said before, we are going to talk about all the things, the key things that we talked today. Let's talk about sustainability. So, the concept of sustainability, we've been talking about it this whole morning, but we forgot how can we contribute to sustainability. Sustainability goes beyond social responsibility, since 1987, the concept of sustainable development is defined as a possibility to contribute with to the future generations and to meet the current necessities. So since then, we were thinking about this vision of future. So how is sustainability linked to this future vision of future? We think about sustainability in three fields: social, economical. We've been talking about this, and there are three dimensions that are linked. And for example, social and economical fields should be balanced. In the environmental field and the social field, we should have the possibility to live in an environment that is more optimal for us. In order to develop our communities, this is essential in the concept of sustainability. We should work in very specific actions in order to meet our necessities and in order to give better conditions to the future generations. So the economic conditions and the social, economic, and environmental conditions are very important in the concept of sustainability. There's another concept which is leadership. Could you talk about leadership and how it promotes the concept of sustainability, which is a little bit complex? Yes, of course, Sarah. This morning we've insisted in how important it is to have this capacity of influence in others, to make others follow you, to make others involved in your company. So when this leadership has a determined purpose that is frameworked in sustainability, that's when we start a very positive route through leadership that can be applied in a company and in the country. So we also have the subject about engagement. Engagement has a kind of a legal aspect as an obligation, but in cooperation field, the engagement is the will that we have in order to progress towards a goal. It is important for the decision taking. So we have leadership with a purpose, we have the engagement and the will in the decision taking process that is joint, and all these three elements that go around sustainability: engagement, leadership, and will, are the perfect elements in order to progress towards the SDGs and the visualization that we did a few moments ago. These three elements, engagement, will, and sustainability, are the foundations of what we have been talking today. And the most important thing is that to progress towards the good path is not a road we take alone. We work with other companies, we work all together, and as we said before, the 2030 agenda is like a puzzle, and we have to work on it all together through partnerships in the public and private sector. I think that is the foundation, and it is essential in order to uh, progress in a comprehensive way. I think that with 17 goals are a lot of goals. There are so many things that you have to be careful about. But we found a formula that help us. The formula is the 5 Ps: people, planet, prosperity, peace, and partnerships. We've been talking this morning about how partnerships, public and private partnerships, are so important. It is essential. Peace, of course, is a key element for development. And this morning, the UN resident coordinator reminded us that in order to transform the future of people, companies can contribute with strategies in order to strengthen the educational system and to close the gap and to empower women, which is basic, essential for the development of a country. In our organization, we have proved that women's income go directly to their homes. So we should really promote women's employment, because we always invest in health, clothes, home, etc. And the P about prosperity means that the private sector can be diversified, and it can promote mechanisms in order to get younger employees. Venezuela is right now in a critical situation, demographic crisis, which means that the proportion of working people is bigger than people that can't work, which means that we need great policies in order to potentiate and to make all these young people work. So this is the P of prosperity, and the P of planet, of the environmental area, is about circular economy and about the national agenda about climate change. We must include the human rights agenda, and in order to promote transparency and sustainable practices, transparent practices. So sustainability, leadership, engagement, these are key to progress in this agenda. What is the next step? What are we gonna do next? Yes. So, I am from the organizational committee of the forum. This is our 3rd forum. And we were thinking that we want to define a route map in which we can strengthen all the actions that we have been talking about. We don't want this to stay in here in a great session with this public and with the online viewers. We want this to achieve concrete actions. We had so many discussions about sustainability from the most simple things and the most simple actions, like the panel about sustainable investments. We also talked about transparency, about employment, about communication inside the companies. We've given a few clues about how to promote sustainable developments in the country, and we have talked about the important role of companies. We want to make sure that companies keep contributing and participating in this beyond their corporate social responsibility and the we want them to consider the SDGs, the ESGs criteria, because they are the pillars for sustainable development. The UN should also keep helping us with their resources and promoting the sustainable development. We were thinking about working throughout the year in different groups about all the SDGs. So you will find, you will see in YouTube a link and a QR code in that you can open, and you can postulate and you can register in this platform and keep adding up organizations and efforts in order to work throughout the year in these working groups. We have been thinking about some leaders that could help us with this. We think it's going to be very interesting, and we're gonna gather a lot of knowledge. But the most important thing is that everybody can participate in this. So I invite you to register in this platform that we've been preparing, and we're gonna give you more details later. And this is thanks to the joint work between companies and the UN. Thank you everybody for participating throughout the morning. You saw some examples of the activities that have been going on. I would also want to tell you that on July 20th we'll have a meeting to present our working plan concerning women's empowerment. Thank you so much. That is everything I wanted to say about the platform, and thank you, Jorge, for being here with me. No, thanks to you for being so inspirational. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. This is an invitation to multiply the impact of our actions and to work in order to achieve this 2030 agenda. We want to thank the organizational committee for organizing this event. So the outcome of this meeting, the forum declares itself in a permanent session in order to achieve our SDGs and our 2030 agenda, and to work in public and private partnerships. Okay, so now to conclude, thank thanks to the committee. Let's work together in order to achieve sustainability in Venezuela and have a good afternoon, and thank you for all the viewers and YouTube. Okay, so now Mr. Hill, Duncan Hill, the who is from the British Embassy, and he's going to talk about the ventures with other participants. Right, so now we're going to start the networking space, which is in another room. We also have some courtesy gifts from the companies that participated in this business sustainability forum. We hope you will like it, and we wait for you outside for the network space. No, no, it's not going to be in another room. It's going to be here. Good afternoon. I am Duncan Hill from the British Embassy. Thank you for inviting us to participate in this forum. For us, this sustainability is such an important subject, and we like... Well, anyways, good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure for us to start this space of collaboration between companies and international organizations. In the UK, we closely know the impact of innovation and of entrepreneurship. And in the 18th century, in order to improve the productive processes in England, we started something that we call nowadays the Industrial Revolution, a series of technological progresses that helped us to start a new era in history. In those days, the academia said that the production could not keep up with the increase of population, and that we will go through a worldwide hunger. But the Industrial Revolution helped to meet the necessity of an increasing population and to give the foundations of a modern economy. Nonetheless, this process had a social consequence, a really bad consequence, like, for example, the great disparity between industrial countries and non-industrialized countries. The challenges that we face nowadays are quite different comparing to those of 300 years ago. For example, armed conflicts, great migratory waves, and of course environmental destruction. The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said that the climate change was the biggest challenge of our generation and of our kids' generation. They said that cities would win or lose their fight against climate change, and that's why it's so important to reunite the public sector, private companies, and new venturers in spaces like this in order to promote the actions that will help us achieve the SDGs in order to guarantee the sustainable development. The UK decided to have a zero carbon emissions economy for 2050, but we know that without the corporate action it will be impossible to achieve this goal. The global company Rolls-Royce is developing technology that helps us use clean energy. Plus, they also there are also many innovations thanks to the government, and we have so many startups and new startups that are producing applications and robotic technology. So this is a new generation of entrepreneurs and businessmen, including those of Venezuela, and that gives me hope. I'm hopeful that they will be able to affront the circumstances. I would like to present Marian Molina, Jose Pocaterra, and the embassy recognizes how important the adventurer's role is in order to accomplish the 2030 agenda. Thank you very much to everybody, and thank you to KPBMG, to Banesco Bank, and to all of you. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. Sometimes I'm a niece of my aunt, so I like telling stories. So I actually took the time to draw up a story, and so I can follow the agenda. So I'm very excited to be here. I would like to thank the British Embassy for the invitation. Meeting JJ is always a pleasure. We were just talking about, I don't know how many times we have shared the same space. That's because we're on the same ship. So let the heart and a few words actually makes practical gifts for kids from ages 0 to 100 who enjoy doing good. Some of you may know stuffed animals. For example, this one, were prepared for the 70th anniversary of Procter & Gamble, and were made with BOP material that they were not using, in compliance with one of the SDG, which is responsible production. Our virtue cycle is based on a threefold impact: economic, environmental, and social. This means that the efforts are always aimed at having a positive impact on the lives of those who touch the brand. I'm not talking only about customers, but also our teams or seamstresses. They have learned not only their trade, but through the program, Leather for Change, Inclusion for Change, they have been able to gain new knowledge for labor and life through courses that they received at ESA on personal finance, leadership, and other soft skills. This program has made them felt included and discover or strengthen their role within their families and the community. At Leatherhead, we believe that the well-being of the community starts with the well-being of the individual. And that's why it's important to build new opportunities for these women. Some of them have become actually heads of household thanks to these projects, and they recognize themselves as equals compared to their husbands. So we speak about gender. I love being a woman, and I think there's no better time to be a woman than now. The positive impacts in our fields of action is undeniable. From the business perspective and faced with the challenges of the new dynamics, increasing the participation of women in society and also in key positions of organizations is fundamental for competitiveness and sustainability of companies. Our skills are different, and our natural ability to manage and take into account the entire context before making decisions has led the UN to declare that women are key for sustainable future. In fact, according to the ILO, the presence of more women in high managerial positions improve the performance of companies and raising by 20% their productivity, and in addition to attracting professionals. So there's no doubt of the positive impacts of women in the business world. Some global stats: 25% of NGO for climate change are founded or led by women. 85% of jobs in health are delivered by women. In the US, women with families work 7 years for free compared with their partner. That is, there is still work to be done together, because feminine values that men also have and appreciate are the key for sustainability. Now, about starting a business in Venezuela, I am convinced that only thanks to a decisive action we can promote human values as the only guarantee to build a society based on dignity and progress. So let us take this opportunity, this unique opportunity, to improve our fate and the fate of our country, because right now we have a better social awareness. So let us continue looking for the meaning of our actions and the reason of being for our businesses in this context. And lastly, one of my tenets: let's use our work and initiatives as a vehicle to be happy, and let's inspire more leaders to have an impact on people with coherence, so we can become the Venezuela that we know we can be. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. Thank you very much. It's hard to follow Maria Angela. I'm a big fan, and we all, I think her work, they are pioneers in Venezuela. So we have been each other's successors. I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud that a woman is leading us, and he's doing a better job than I am. So that's a good indicator. So I just want to tell you a little bit about why I'm here. I'm very excited to be here about this subject in Venezuela as an entrepreneur, because, as they have said here, we are the most important driver of the country. So in the near future, this Agenda 2030 can materialize, and not only some specific objectives, but also in an integrated manner, promoting partnerships, as in SDG 17. In my case, I started as an entrepreneur, focusing on Vicua, one of our companies, dedicated to smart cities by using data, how we help public officials to gather real-time data and to use services of the city, or to improve the services and to achieve sustainable development in the urban context, being that we are the most urbanized region in the world. So as a Venezuelan company, we've been able to work in Colombia, Mexico, Peru. I tell you this because this was the origin, or this urban data led to the second project, which is La Guagua, Have you seen these buses? These purple buses? Yeah. I'm glad. How many of you have been in one? Yeah, I have to give you some passes. Well, the reality is that this has been quite a journey in the strict sense of the world. Riding this bus has been quite a surprise because of the impact it has. Trying to find the relation between this and the SDG. This came up as an idea of improving mobility of the people, especially on commuting, this everyday commuting. We're talking about 200 million people in Latin America every day, and 70% said that it's not giving you any comfort or quality of life. I'm not talking about only Venezuela, but the entire region, from Mexico to Argentina. So what started as an idea to promote urban development with SDG 11 in mind for mobility has become for me quite a discovery on how we can meet this agenda 2030 and actually tackle several SDGs with one initiative. So for us, for instance, it has been quite a surprise on the issue of gender equality. How can a bus on the street can have an impact on gender equality? Well, we are the first Venezuelan startup, technology-based startup, with a woman CEO, our co-founder, Maria Alejandra Vera, my wife also. So I'm happy that I am Joaquin's dad or Mafer's husband. But I don't know if it has been on purpose, but 63 of the travels on Wawa are by women. So we are very honored, and we ask these women users, it is because they suffer the most. They are more vulnerable in the unsecured, uncomfortable transportation networks. These hardworking women do not have a dignified infrastructure. So these are very impactful phrases. One of the users told us, for the first time I can wear a skirt to go back to work thanks to you. So you are surprised. As a man, you are surprised by these comments because we cannot really live it in our flesh, but we see that we are having a positive impact. So we can divide this gap or this gender inequality that sometimes we don't see or we don't feel or we don't recognize. Second, how having this service and offering this service to the companies has promoted decent work and economic growth. Because I always talk to the companies that have become our clients, increasingly larger companies. How can you ask someone to be productive if they have to spend 2 hours commuting from work to home, home to work, and then cook for their children, run errands, find cash? Imagine all the complexities, and how can we think that they're going to be productive? So that's when you realize the value of something as simple as mobility on the quality of life, but also on the productivity. And we actually have been able to measure it. And also how this promotes innovation. Some of the drivers told us that from different companies, they can actually share the same bus, something that was not really natural before, or they didn't have a safe space because you don't know who was next to you. Because users have to be registered now, they belong to a company. Well, these synergies that have been created, and they actually reached out to us with some comments, and actually we're going to have a wedding of people who met on one of our buses. So this becomes moving every day, and sharing these spaces with people becomes something where we can connect some dots that were not connected because we are in a safe, secure context. So this has been one of the benefits that we've seen in mobilizing Venezuelans. Then how did we reduce inequality? Because it's very nice to have a company say, I want to give this benefit to everyone, either blue-collar workers or managers or analysts. They all have the same quality, Wi-Fi, AC, and they all enjoy a safe transportation. Population in the city, some of them have a car, some of them don't even have the means of transportation. So this promotes equality regardless of their socioeconomic status. And with this project, we are impacting climate. Yeah, we still use diesel buses, and if you want to donate an electric bus, we'd like to be the first one to have an electric fleet in the country. But in the end, the fact that we have a high capacity vehicle, when we fill these buses for commuting, I think we are saving, for example, or we are reducing the carbon emissions of over 12,000 vehicles. We don't do it ourselves because these are still diesel vehicles, but at least we are reducing in the fact that these people are not using their cars. So that's a way to contribute to this Agenda 2030. And lastly, the most important is partnerships. Thanks to the fact that we have enabled an entire ecosystem because we are moving Venezuelans, we are actually providing an insurance to our travelers thanks to Juan Bernardo Sanz and one of our investors who has been with us. We are insuring actually with a $10,000 coverage, 1,000 insurance for personal accidents for $1 that is included in the fare, and giving a sense of security also to the employer. And also partnerships, we're developing partnership with banks. So with these organizations we can build a future, how we can give credits to these drivers. This is a new business opportunity, a gigantic business opportunity, and a whole economy that can generate around it. And we are developing interesting projects. So I wanted to stress the importance of entrepreneurs, how this story, I'm sure, is not only for our company or for Leatherheart and Maria Angel. You bring Venezuelan entrepreneurs, they will tell you the same story. People with resilience, hard work, with a supporting ecosystem, with financing, mentorship, support, because as you can imagine, it's difficult to be an entrepreneur here. We have a golden opportunity here to meet this agenda, but also to give an example and be at the forefront. Thank you very much. Well, after listening to you, this has been truly inspiring. The future is here, the future is very near, and we are building it with people like you, so thank you very much for that. Thank you also, Duncan Hill from the British Embassy. And now we will invite you to the networking space at gallery number 3, next to the room. Remember that you will receive some gifts from Banesco, sponsored by this company who has supported this Business Sustainability Forum and the different UN agencies. So we hope you like it. Now we can go to the networking space. Thank you.